Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into Clay Basics with Studio 550. Today I'm going to show you a couple basic techniques to help you get started. I'm going to show you how to attach two pieces of clay, how to make a pinch pot, how to roll a coil, and how to roll a slab. I'm going to be using a stoneware today that will be microwave, dishwasher, and food safe when it's fired, and you can get this from Studio 550 with our take and make curbside kits, or you could also use air dry clay from the craft store if you want to, but keep in mind that that project will not be food safe and it will not be as durable. So the first technique that I'm going to show you is how to attach two pieces of clay using a technique called scratch and slip. So these are the two things that I want to attach. I want to make sure this cute little teddy bear gets his head. And the tools that I'm going to need to do this are a little scratchy tool here, which is just 4 or 5 toothpicks taped together, and some slip. And slip is just clay mixed with water, but it's like glue for clay projects, so you definitely need some. The first thing I'm going to do is dip my scratchy tool into my slip so it's nice and goopy at the top. And then I'm going to really rough up the surface area of the pieces that I want to attach. And don't worry if it looks messy, because you're not really going to see it and you'll have an opportunity to clean it up later. So a nice rough surface there. And then on the bottom of his head, where I want to attach it to the neck, I'm also going to rough that up a little bit. Now I'm going to gently hold my two pieces in my hand and I'm going to wiggle them together until slip oozes out of the seams. Next, I'm going to take a paintbrush and I'm just going to wipe away the extra slip to clean up my project a little bit. When you're scratching and slipping, please make sure that all of the elements you're attaching are about the same consistency. If you try and attach a really stiff piece of clay to a really wet piece of clay, they'll fall apart later. You also can't attach two really dry pieces of clay. So make sure that your parts are attached really well while it's nice and wet, because if they fall off once it's dry, you might not be able to put them back together. We're going to set this guy off to the side, and now I'm going to show you how to make a pinch pot. We're going to start off with a lump of clay, and I want to make this nice and round. So I'm going to cup one hand and rest it in there, and then I'm going to cup the other hand, and I'm going to pat it as I turn the ball of clay in my hand until it's nice and round. Then my next step is going to be to smooth out any of these seams or cracks with my thumb, just by moving them along the surface of the clay and pushing down gently. The harder you push down, the bigger the dent is going to be. So now I've smoothed out my ball of clay, and now I'm going to take my thumb and stick it down into the middle. I want to stick it pretty far into the piece of clay so that my bottom isn't too thick and I'm not wasting clay down there. This is a cross section to show you what the proportions look like on the sides. I'm going to pinch between my thumb, my forefinger, and my middle finger as I turn the piece of clay in my hand. The pressure is only between my fingertips, and I'm going nice and slow because I want to keep the sides nice and even. Once I've made a full rotation, then I move my fingertips up into the thicker area of my pinch pot, and I continue to turn and pinch evenly all the way around. Once I've gotten up to the top, then it's time to check the rim to make sure there's no little cracks, and there are. Can you see those little cracks on the top? I want to get rid of those. So I'm going to take my finger and smooth them out by moving my thumb in a circular motion across the top. If your clay feels kind of dry, you can dip your thumb into some water, and that will help get rid of some of the cracks. Pinch pots can really be whatever you want them to be. This is a great jumping off point for a little sculpture, or it could just be a really nice little thing to put next to your stove and have some salt in. It's totally up to you. And they can be all kinds of different thicknesses and weights. If you want to have a really thin pinch pot, just keep pinching the sides nice and evenly, and sometimes it helps to set it aside in between stages so that it has a chance to stiffen up a little bit once it gets thin. So here's a pinch pot. I could do a little bit more with it. I really like the fingerprints on the outside. I think I'll keep them. Now I'm going to show you how to do a coil. So I start with a lump of clay, and then I squish it in between my hands to get it into kind of a hot dog shape and make it a little bit longer before I start rolling it on the table, like so. Now I'm going to start with my fingertips, and I'm going to roll it all the way to my wrists and then back towards my body. As I continue doing this, I move my hands over so that they're not staying in the same spot the whole time. If I were to leave my hands in just one spot, then my clay would get really thin in that spot and it'd be really uneven. As you're rolling, you want to make sure that the whole coil is moving together, so that if my hands are just over here, this side is still rolling. And if it doesn't, then you need to break it in half and just use a little bit at a time. Coil projects work the best when your coils are nice and even and they're not too dry. So if you need to, you can use a damp sponge and drag it along your coil if you start to see some of those little cracks that we saw in the rim of the pinch pot. And you can set them aside and make sure they're wrapped in plastic until you use them as well. Coils can be turned into a pot on their own, or they could be the arms and legs of a little sculpture if you want to. But whatever you decide to do with your coils, please make sure that you scratch and slip to attach them, because if you were to just stack your coils on top of each other like this to try and make a little pot, it's hollow in the inside, they would fall right apart. So you have to scratch and slip in between these layers. The next thing that we're going to make is a slab, or a flat piece of clay. So I've got my little lump here. I'm going to put it in my flat palm, and I'm going to smack my hand, the other palm, and turn it in my hand as I smack to turn this into a nice little even pancake. Now this is a good starting point to really roll it out on the table. If you don't have a rolling pin, you can just use a bottle with straight sides and with newspaper on the outside. So I'm rolling it up and down the piece of clay, pushing down gently with my palms, and every once in a while I turn my piece of clay so that it stays really even, and this also helps it stay nice and strong so that I'm stretching the clay in a couple different directions. The surface that I'm working on is not super sticky. It's just a particle board from Home Depot. But if you're working on your countertops and they're marble or linoleum or a plasticky kind of surface, the clay can get really stuck. So use newspaper in between the clay and your table surface. Once you've rolled out your slab and it's nice and flat, then you want to take your wooden rib and go back and forth to compress the clay. This is another really important thing. This helps keep it nice and strong so that it won't fall apart later. And it also gets rid of any uneven textures or weird lines. If you don't have a wooden rib like this, you can also use a plastic gift card. These work fantastic as well. You want to do this on both sides of your slab. So do it on one side, then gently lift it up and do it on the other side. Once you've finished your slab, you can take a butter knife, or if your wooden tool has a nice sharp side, you can cut it, and then you could roll it up to turn it into a little cup or something, or a telescope. So those are the basic techniques that I wanted to show you. Before we go, I just want to show you two other little things that are just basic clay rules. So one of the things that I tell all of my classes when we're working in person is that if something sticks off of your pot as far as your thumb, then it needs to be as thick as your thumb. So this is a great example of a protrusion that's still nice and strong. This could be the handle of a pot, or maybe it is the nose. You can't see his eyes. Maybe it's the nose of an elephant or something. If you have something like this and you're really attached to the idea of having a spike, just be warned that this is probably going to break off as soon as it gets dry. If it's something like the tentacle of an octopus that just absolutely has to be long and thin, you could do something like this and wrap it around the side of the pot so that it's not sticking out. You still get the same effect in terms of having a nice long tentacle, but it's just not as dangerous. Another thing that you need to know is that anything that is solid and is the size of a golf ball has to be hollow. So this is the size that I'm talking about. It fits in the palm of my hand, but it's still got some weight to it. And the reason for that is that it will explode if it's not hollow. So you're just going to take your thumb, poke it onto the inside, just like you're starting a new pinch pot, and that is all you need to do. If you take your little mini pinch pot and you put it on top of something in a way that closes up the hole, please make sure that you poke a vent hole so that air can escape when it's being fired. You can hide the hole if you want to, but we need to have some kind of hole for the air to escape. Dry clay is very brittle, so once you're done with your project, please wrap them up in plastic so that they stay at that leather hard, kind of workable phase before you get it to the studio to fire. That will help us make sure that we can fix any problems that occur after it's been transported, and it will also make it a lot easier for you to transport. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at info@550arts.com, reach out to us on Facebook, reach out to us on Instagram. We're happy to help you. We hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you check out the rest of your videos and have a ton of fun working with clay.